Hello, everybody. It's episode 11 of Grizzlies Worldwide, and tonight we have with us Isaac Simpson from Memphis. Isaac, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Should I ask? Yeah,
yeah.
okay, from Memphis. Yeah, okay, straight from Memphis. Good, good, good. How are you doing, Isaac?
But I'm doing well, man. Thanks for inviting me on, man. I always enjoy talking Grizzlies with great Grizz fans, and glad to be on, man. International Grizz fans, it's awesome, man. To have Grizzlies fans all around the world, being in a small market, man. That's actually something new because in the past you didn't see a lot of Grizz fans outside of the country, other than maybe Spain with Pau Gasol and Marc Gasol. So it's good to have international Grizz fans, man. Grizz fans all over the world now, man. So excited about it. I know people all around the world excited about this team, and I think it's going to be a good year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, let me thank you for joining in. It's an honor to have you here. Yeah, you said like it was not common to have Grizzlies fans all over the world, mostly from Spain. How was it back then in the past? Yeah, you said Spain, which like I'm from Portugal, so it's
Yeah,
we are neighbor countries with Marc Gasol and Pau Gasol, I believe, both from Spain. How was
yeah,
it back then?
yeah. I mean, it was great. We also had one Carlos Navarro for a year here as well, who also played for FC Barcelona. We've had some international flavor on this team in the past. We've had some international guys, but again, this franchise has really grown since the early days. Memphis is not a huge city in the United States. It's actually the smallest market in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So until we really got John Moran and kind of this new iteration, it was kind of more of a localized thing, like people in
Mm-hmm.
Memphis. But now with John Morant being kind of a superstar, a world renowned superstar with a shoe deal and everything that comes with that, we've got a lot of more fans, just not only in the United States but around the world. So it's this franchise has really grown, man, and the growth has been amazing to watch.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Like to be honest, I was in Memphis once, like maybe 30 years ago, because I was on a trip to the Caribbean,
Yeah,
and I had a flight that were across the US, and there was a flight that was delayed, and I had to spend overnight in Memphis. I didn't really knew at the time. It was in like 1996 that one day I would be supporting Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah, I find it funny now. Yeah, um, yeah, and yeah, I came in the Grizzlies mostly because of Chapman. A lot of people
yeah,
know that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's funny how things sometimes work in life. Okay, so heading to the Memphis Grizzlies. First of all, I want to talk with you about the draft. From what I read from you on Twitter, you were more on Clingan than Edey, right? Am I
Yeah,
wrong or am I right? Okay.
yeah, you're correct. I was a big Donovan Clingan guy. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of broke my heart on draft night because there was a
Okay.
report that came out that the Grizzlies had actually traded up to six with Charlotte, and the deal was done. They were going to take Clingan, and then they walked it back and said that wasn't happening anymore. That Charlotte was going to keep the pick. We ended up with Zach Edey, and I've come around a lot more now. I think my biggest question with Zach Edey is we see
Mm-hmm.
the tremendous numbers he put up in college. I don't think there's any question. Two-time college player of the year, national player of the year, just massive
Mm-hmm.
numbers like that we've never seen before. Some of the stuff that he's done and the numbers he put up. But my question with Edey was more so how would some of those things translate to the league? Because he's a guy that in college at Purdue, they kind of ran everything through him. They just kind of threw the ball at him, and he just camped out in the paint. They just kind of threw the ball into him in the paint, and he just kind of stood around and watched him work. And in the NBA, his role is going to be a lot different than that. He's not going to be a guy that they just kind of run a lot of offense through. They just kind of throw the ball into him and just kind of stand around and watch him. And also, they have the 3-second rule in NBA, and camping out in the lane, he's not going to be able to do that as much as he did in college. I also worry about possibly teams hunting him in the pick and roll with
Mm-hmm.
guards. That's kind of a question mark with me. But one thing about Zach Edey that I've never questioned is his will, his work ethic, whatever the best of his abilities is, he's going to get that. He's going to give you 110%. He's a guy that takes everything personal. He's super competitive. So a lot of times that's half the battle. And I've come around a lot more now. If he can stay on the floor, if the other teams can't play him off the floor with the pick and roll, he's going to really contribute to this team. He's going to be able to rebound. He's going to set screens. This team has really struggled in the half court. That's kind of been their Achilles heel for a lot of years now, and I think he could really help with that if he's able to stay on the floor. And what I would like to see is John Morant and him develop a two-man game. That's something that this
Mhm.
team hasn't had. Him and Jaron really haven't developed that. If they could develop that, and he could stay on the floor, man, that could be really dangerous and hard to stop with those two guys.
We like the pick and roll and the lob and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just throw it because all you got to do is throw it up, man. His catch radius is
Yeah.
ridiculous with his wingspan. You just throw the ball up there anywhere, man. He's gonna catch it.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think that's a fair question and a fair point that I want to ask you because I read not only from you but from other people on Twitter and from sorry, and from how do you say, prospects. I'm not really into prospects,
Yeah,
but and like the big question about Edey was how could his game on college on Purdue, right, then translate to the NBA level, and that
yeah.
was a big question, and you kind of answered just now, but like pinpointing, how do you think that his game can translate, like what main issues can he have, and like what can also on the good side stand out?
Yeah, as far as the translate, I think the question is that if this had been 10, 15 years ago, he would have been the number one pick. There's no question. In the league in the past 10 or 15 years ago, he would be the perfect guy, kind of the way. But now the modern NBA bigs are more guys that can kind of stretch the floor, can move their feet a little bit. It's kind of going away from the bigs on the inside, the big inside presence. But he might be unique. A guy that size that can do some of the things he does. You don't see that a lot. Like he's more athletic than most guys at that
Hmm.
size. So I think that could help him because he can move his feet. He's not fast or anything, but he's faster than most guys would be at his size. So and again, I really think he can help the half court offense. This team really needs rebounding. Jaron Jackson Jr. is just not a rebounder. I think we've kind of discovered that. We've kind of deployed him to rebound more. People have discussed that over and over. They broke it down like why doesn't Jaron rebound? I think at this point in his career, I don't think all of a sudden overnight he's going to become a great rebounder. So you need to bring somebody in that can supplement him and help his weakness. And Zach Edey can definitely do that. If Zach Edey's on the floor, he's going to gobble up rebounds. I mean, you're talking about a guy 7'4", 7'5" at 300 pounds. I mean, nobody's going to be able to stop him at that size. I mean, he
Hmm.
should get double digit rebounds. I think from day one. I think he'll be able to do that, and that's going to really help this team as far as offensive rebounds and getting extra possessions because that's something that this team really missed when they lost Steven Adams because kind of the way that they play, they
Hmm.
they're not a good shooting team. So in order to kind of keep up with other teams offensively, the way they did that with Steven Adams was they would take all those offensive rebounds and get extra possessions, and they're able to score more. And that's something that they really missed last year without Steven Adams. So now that they have another guy in there that can gobble up those rebounds, I think that's going to really help this offense. It's also going to help when the game slows down. You have a guy that can kind of work the ball inside too and kind of help that half court offense. So again, man, but my question has always been how much is he going to be able to stay on the floor? But if he's able to stay on the floor, if teams can't hunt him and play him off the floor, he's going to really help this team. I think John Morant having that type of point guard, a guy that can, like you mentioned, throw up the lobs to him because you can throw the ball up anywhere. I mean, he's going to go up and get it. That could be really devastating for other teams to stop defensively. So again, man, I've come around on it a lot. Like I was fully against him prior to the
Hmm.
draft, but now that I've kind of looked at the fit and how he's going to fit this team, I think it might work out.
Oh, okay. You mentioned two questions. You mentioned 2 points that I did want to question you. When you say is he able to stay on the floor? You mean on the floor? You mean like on the court? You mean like fall problems? Problems?
Yeah, it could be multiple things. I think a lot of the things that he got away with in college,
Mm-hmm.
as far as fouling, I don't think he's going to get those. I think some of those are going to be called fouls in the NBA. So I think that could be an issue. And also, I think defensively is the main thing when guards they're going to try to get him switched on smaller guards. And if
Mm-hmm.
they do that, I think he could have some trouble guarding those guards, and they might have to take him off the floor. It's kind of similar to what we saw with Steven Adams in the playoffs a couple years ago against Minnesota. When they played Minnesota in the first round, they really couldn't
Yeah.
play him. Minnesota kind of
So
played him off the floor. So I think that could be
the
something similar.
BBC.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could be an issue. But I think Zach Edey, man, I mean, I think he might be a unicorn. Maybe he's proven everybody wrong, man. At every level of basketball he's ever played, he's proven everybody wrong, man. So I'm gonna bag off on that. Just wait and see, because again, he's a guy that's just kind of superseded whatever the critics have said about him. Anything negative, he's found a way to break through, man. So maybe he's able to do it at the NBA level as well. So I'm optimistic about it.
Okay, so you also the second thing you made me think about. You talked about the similarities with Stephen Adams. Um, what similarities do you see?
Yeah, I actually think he could be a better version of what Steven Adams. I think he's a little bit more athletic than
Mm-hmm.
Steven Adams. Some of the offense, they ran a lot of offense through Steven Adams with his passing, and we've seen Zach Edey do that in college. He can really pass out of the post, get the ball out to open shooters, set no screens that Steven Adams set, which big for John Morant is also big for shooters like Desmond Bain. If they bring Luke Kennard back, having a guy like that in the paint really opens everything up for the offense. Opens up those driving lanes where John Morant can get to the basket and kind of have that protector for John Morant. They really missed that inside presence last year without Steven Adams, and
For
having
sure.
having a guy like Zach Edey also helps Jaren Jackson Jr. tremendously. 2 years ago, he was the Defensive Player of the Year. Last year, with the team kind of in shambles, he kind of focused more on offense than he did on defense. Having a guy like Zach Edey anchor on the inside just allows him to kind of roam and block shots and kind of do what he does. He doesn't have to worry about taking that beating from the biggest guy on the other team because he has kind of that protection in Zach Edey. So I think that's going to help his game. It's just going to help everybody overall. I mean, just him being on the floor just completely changes how this offense looks and allows again Jared to do what he does best on defense. And that's why he was able to win that Defensive Player of the Year, because he had Steven Adams back there as protection, and he missed that last year. And now he's going to have that again with Zach Edey in the middle.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. For sure. Also, you mentioned like it. It seems to me like from what I'm watching on social media, it's taking in like the Greece mentality. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, I mean, personality wise, man, he
Mm-hmm.
fits this team to a T. That competitiveness. I mean, you talk about John Morant and the way he's competitive. Zach, he's the same way. I mean, you hear his comments. He really believes in himself. Every time in college where he matched up against another guy, whether it was Donovan Clingan or the other guys, Kyle Filipowski, other guys that I don't. Actually, they didn't play Duke this year, but guys that uh, were NBA bound as well. Other big men that were in college that were going to get drafted. He took those matchups personally. I mean, you could see that he wanted to really play well against those teams, and he has a competitive drive that like no other. That's one thing that you definitely can't question about him, and that's what I said at the top of the show, that whatever ability he has in him, you're going to get. He's going to reach that level, whatever his ceiling is, because he's going to work hard. He's going to put the effort in, and those are the type of players we love here in Memphis. I think he's going to be a fan favorite because of kind of that moxie and that confidence that he has in himself. That's what we love here in this city, because that's kind of a reflection of how we are. Nothing. This is not a city where it's not a glamorous city where anything's given to us. It's just kind of you earned everything, you work hard, and it pays off. And I think that fits Zach Edey to a T. I think he's that guy, and I think the fans are going to fall in love with him quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's exciting to hear. Um, and also because I am from Portugal, and one thing that like really led me to be a Grizzlies fan was that same type of mentality. Is like nothing is given to us. We work hard, and now we will stick together. And yeah, so I do really get that energy, that vibe flowing from Memphis. Now, still on the draft, we also draft Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer. Did you know them before? Did you watch them? Whatever. What are your thoughts on both of them? On both of them? Sorry,
Yeah,
Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer.
I'm a big time draft guy, so I break down prospects. That's kind of
Okay,
one of
that's
my
good.
things. So yeah, I'm definitely into to breaking down the prospects. I love what those both of those players. I mean, A plus definitely second day for the Grizzlies to get both of those guys because I would have been happy getting Cam Spencer at 39, and they were able to get Jalen Wells at 39, then come back and trade up and get Cam Spencer at 53. I think both of those guys are really good fits. First off, Jalen Wells, the size at 6'7", and he's a true shooting guard. He's not a small forward. He's a 6'7" guard, which is really good size. And he can really shoot the basketball. And we know this team can use more shooting. I think he shot
You're
up.
speaking Jalen Wells, right?
Yeah, Jalen Wells
Yeah,
shot
yeah, 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 yeah.
43% from three in college. And one thing about him, a lot of prospects, you look at their college shooting percentage, you'll say they shot 43%, but they might have only shot two or three threes a game. Jaden Wells shot
Mhm.
close to five or six threes a game. He's a real shooter. Real three-level scorer, can score from three, mid-range, can get to the basket. I mean, he's a much better defender than he's been given credit for. I see a lot of people saying that he's not a good defender, and when you watch him on film, I don't see that at all. I think he's an underrated defender. He's a guy that I think he's going to be on a regular contract. He's not going to be on a two-way. It looks like Cam Spencer is probably going to start off on a two-way. Jalen Wells would be on a regular contract, so he'll be on the roster full time. I think he's a guy that could possibly surprise people and break through this year with the way that he can shoot the basketball and his team's lack of shooting. He might find his way on the floor. Has an interesting story. Started off at a small school and worked his way up
Yeah,
to,
I
to, to
know that.
Washington State. So, I
Hmm.
mean, he's another guy that kind of fits that, worked
That's
hard, earned his
yeah,
spot, just like we talked about with Edey. He's another guy that fits into that category. So I think that's a really good fit as well. And man, Cam Spencer, man, it was one of my favorite kind of sleeper prospects in this draft. I was so
really.
excited, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
was.
were.
Yeah, man, I was so excited for them to come back and get him at 53. I mean, you coming from that UConn program, two-time national champion. He's a super high IQ basketball player. He's like having an extra coach on the floor. He plays the shooting guard, but he can also masquerade kind of as a point guard. He can be a secondary ball handler. He can really shoot the basketball as well. You can tell that they really want to add shooting, and they really did that with these two guys. He has a Moxley that he plays with, just plays with attitude, doesn't back down. So all three of these guys really fit that culture. So I think they did a really good job in this particular draft of bringing in guys that fit the culture and guys that fit needs. They needed a center, got that done. Needed more shooting on this team, and brought in two guys that can really shoot the basketball. So I think these three guys are really going to be a big. All three of them are going to be a big part of this team's future going forward.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. How would you, if you were to grade this draft on Grizzlies, how would you grade it?
I would probably say B plus, just because A plus for the second day, man. Getting Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer is A plus across the board, no question for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say B plus just because I still have a few questions about Zach Edey. I just need to see it with him because
Okay.
again, we haven't seen a guy in a modern NBA really at that size be able to stay on the floor and play at a high level. So I just need to see it. Again, he's a guy that's superseded all expectations. So I'm not going to doubt the guy. I'm going to wait and see. But I still have some questions, but I feel a lot better about it than I did before. So I'll say B plus. But again, man, I think Zach Kleiman did a fantastic job. He's kind of had some bad drafts the last couple of years. I think he really redeemed himself with this draft. Because again, Zach Edey definitely feels a need. I don't think there's any question this team had to find a big man, had to find some size inside to pair next to Jaren. Because I'm not a fan of Jaron playing the center or playing the five. So I think they needed somebody that could move him back to the four. And they definitely did that with Zach Edey. And again, man, to get those two guys, Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer in the second round, man, I think just a massive home run for Zach Kleiman.
Yeah, yeah, and you just brought up in a sentence like two questions that I want to ask you. One is because there's this perpetuous ongoing debate on Twitter about Jaron at the five. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it at all. So I'm glad that they did go out and get some sides with Zach Edey, because I think if you listen to Jaron himself, he'll even say that he doesn't really want to play the five. That's just not his
Mm-hmm.
game, and I think it takes away him playing center. I think takes away from his game defensively, because when he has to go out there and bang with those bigger guys, he can't roam and be that help side shot blocker that he usually is. It just takes away from his game. He's not a guy that you want back to the basket trying to score. He steps out and shoots threes, so he spreads the defense out. He's kind of more of a face-up player. So I think him playing the four, I think for him and for this team overall, I think is his best position. He's going to play some five. He's probably going to close games at the five. I don't think they're going to have Edey in and close games. I think Jaron will
Mm-hmm.
close games at the five, but that's fine. But you don't want Jaron to have to play the five full time, because he's not a rebounder. And when you have him at that position, if he's your biggest guy on the floor, that hurts you as a team. And I think we saw that last year. So his
Mm-hmm.
defense kind of dropped off because, like you said, two years ago, defensive player of the year didn't even make an all defensive team this past year, and a lot of that had to do with him having to play center with no Steven Adams and his team being so banged up. And I think his scoring numbers went up, but if you look overall, his efficiency numbers went down, and he still wasn't a big rebounder. So I'm not a big fan of it. So I'm glad that they have a guy that can, again, man, to replace Steven Adams, that can kind of come in and play next to him and kind of be a counter to some of his weaknesses. The things that he doesn't do well, Zach Edey does well. He rebounds, he sets screens. Those are the things that Jaron kind of needs next to him, and allows him to kind of roam again and be that
Yeah,
defensive anchor.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I love it, man. I think it's a great fit, and I think it's going to help Jaron. And again, like I said, I think it's going to help everybody on the roster overall. I think it's going to help the half court offense, and it's going to help this team rebound and second chance points, everything, man. If Zach Edey can stay on the floor, man, he's going to be a big help for this team, and I think he has a chance of winning Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you understand that?
Yeah, I think he has a really good chance, because you kind of look at this draft class, and a lot of times Rookie of the Year is more about fit, situation, and playing time. And again, man, I think they need Zach Edey to be a big part of this team to be successful. So he's going to have an opportunity to be out there on the floor and put up numbers. So if he's what they expect him to be, he's going to get the minutes, and he's going to be able to produce. So I think he has a real shot at it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. That leads me to another question. Okay, we have Edie, we have BC. Okay, also we have in a two-way Trey Jamison. Okay, as you said, Jaren can some at spurs of games play the five. Do we need another center?
Oh, you also have Santi on the roster as well, at power
Good.
forward. So it's kind of crowded there, but I do think they do need another guy. Maybe it's probably a guy that a lower tier player that's probably not going to play much unless somebody gets hurt. I think just to protect on the fact that if Edey is a guy that at his size that can't play any more than 20 minutes or so, you might have a few minutes here or there for another guy to come in, like a vet guy that's been around the league. A couple guys, Dario Saric is a
Mm-hmm.
guy that's still out there that I like, 6'10". He can play the four and the five, so it gives you some.
Where does he play? Saric, Saric, Saric.
Yeah, I mean he's a free agent right now.
Okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, he
He
played.
was.
He had a big game for Croatia. Actually, the other day he had like a triple double. So he's on the free agent market. There's some rumors that he might leave the NBA and go play overseas. That I think Panthiakos, Greece is a team that I think is possibly trying to sign him right now. So he could be off the board. Daniel Tice is another guy that played for
Mm-hmm.
Boston. That could possibly be a piece that could come in. A guy that's a veteran guy that if you needed an emergency big, he can come in if somebody gets hurt, if Jared went down, God forbid, or Zach Edey went down. He's a guy that could come in and play some minutes for you. So I think there is a spot for a fifth big, just in case of emergency. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get minutes unless something goes wrong, mostly though. But I think in free agency, if they're going to go out and add a guy, I think that's probably a position that they need to look at. But it's not something that's make or break for the team. But I think I would feel more comfortable if they had another guy back there.
Okay, so you're watching the free agency. Okay, and Grizzlies are at this point they just did nothing in the free agency. How are you looking at the free agency in general, and of course in particular in the Grizzlies, um, the Grizzlies side? Hello. Yep. Isaac. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. No.
Okay.
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 I think you were gone. I thought you were gone.
No, sorry. I don't know what's going on there. But yeah,
Oh yeah, it's cool.
yeah,
You you heard my question? My question?
yeah. As far as the free agency, yeah, it's an interesting situation because they didn't pick up Luka Kennard's option, so they're kind of waiting on him. And I think the dominoes will fall once that situation settles itself out. Whether they re-sign him at a lower amount, I think that's the goal. You
Yeah,
haven't really.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry for interrupting
No,
because
no problem.
that's another question that I was going to ask you. On your thoughts, what's this look and our thing going?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it was he was making. If they picked up his option, he would have paid him. Had to pay him 14.5 million
Mm-hmm.
this year, which would have put them in what you call the first apron, which
Yeah.
causes some penalties, some different things that you can't do as far as going forward draft picks or bringing in certain guys as far as their contracts. So they didn't want to go into the first apron, so they didn't re-sign him there. But what I think what they want to do is restructure his contract and give him a couple more years at a cheaper amount. I think if they re-sign him, it'll be something like 3 years at 10 million a year instead of the 14, and that keeps them under the first apron. So that allows them to possibly bring in another guy, and if kind of that center that we talked about, or one more guy, gives them about $4 or $5 million there to work with under that first apron. So I think they want to bring Luke Kennard back. I think at this point, personally,
Yeah.
I would probably bring somebody else in. I think there are other guys on the market that are a little bit better. Gary Trent Jr. From Toronto is a guy that
Would you
I'm a
like
big.
to? Would you like to? Would you like sign and trade him? Because Luke is an asset. So I think that you just don't. Okay, do like okay, we're not interested. Go away. You like on a business side of it, like it's an asset. So would you like sign and trade and then, or okay, Gary Trent is a free agent, so it wouldn't be a sign and trade. Uh, uh, Specifically with the look in our situation, what would you do?
Well, actually, they can't trade him when you once you decline an option on a team. If you decline an option on a player and you re-sign him at a lower amount, they actually can't trade him until like December. I think the date might be December 15th. So they actually can't trade Luke right now. So it's either re-sign him or let him walk. And if they let him walk,
Okay, I
yeah,
didn't know those. So that they could
yeah,
like trade him like in the
instead of trade deadline,
that.
yeah. Yeah, but I think they want to keep him. Like I said, I think they're going to
Mm-hmm.
restructure his deal and sign it for 2 or 3 more years at a cheaper amount. But if they don't, if they let him walk, then they would have about 13 or 14 million, $13 million or so to play with in free agency. So if they don't bring him back, they could sign another player on a similar deal that they were going to sign him on. Like and I mentioned, Gary Trent is a guy that can shoot the
Yeah.
basketball as well, but he's a better player than Luke Kennard because he does other things. He's
Mm-hmm.
a better defender. He can get to the basket, and Luke is more kind of a shooter, and Gary Trent can
Mm-hmm.
do it all a little bit more. So I think he would be a better fit for this team. But I think they're going to try to re-sign Luke. But I think until that situation plays itself out, you're really not going to hear anything else, because that everything that they do, depending on how much money they have left, or what they're going to be able to do trade wise, and the money they're going to bring in, it hinges on what they do with Luke Kennard.
Okay. Yeah. 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 You got a point there. So also, I read you were questioning some GM decisions and some championship mentality. What you wanna elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I want to preface this by a lot of people like kind of take your comments wrong. Like when you say when I say those things, I'm not saying that this team's not very good. Like a lot of people will
Mm-hmm.
take that as you're saying, oh, well, the team's not going to be any good. This team is very good as is. There's no question about that. If this team stays healthy, they're in the mix with the top teams in the West. When you talk about Dallas, OKC, Minnesota, Denver, they're in the mix with
Never.
those
Yeah.
teams. But I
Uh-huh.
feel like I feel like they're probably on the lower end of that group. And when you look around the league at these other teams, like Dallas, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
Dallas was a lottery team coming into the season last year. And at the trade deadline, they looked at their weaknesses and they went out. They were aggressive. They went out and got P.J. Washington. They went out and got, excuse
Gafford.
me, Daniel Gafford. And I think that really helped them and kind of propelled them into the finals. And even though they were in the finals, they go into the offseason and they go out and add Klay Thompson. They're not
Exactly. Yeah.
kind of sitting back and saying, okay, well, we're good enough. We're in the finals, so we don't need to do anything. And I think sometimes with this Grizzlies team, I think this front office is very safe. They're conservative. They're willing to kind of wait and see things play out when a lot of other teams are kind of like, we're not waiting to see it play out. We're just going to keep adding talent. We're going to try to make this team as good as possible. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we're going to kind of push it. And the Grizzlies have kind of been reluctant to do that. They're just kind of safe with everything. I think as an organization, that's just kind of how they operate. They don't take a lot of risks. And sometimes when you take risks, man, that's what really pays off. I just think that if opportunity presents itself, I don't think you should just say we're good enough. And sometimes I feel like that's just kind of how they feel. I know last year was a bad year. There
Yeah.
was some positives out of that, but they're kind of saying, well, we just want to see what this team looks like if they're healthy, and I get that in a way, but I would like to see them be aggressive too. And I
So
just I don't think a lot of times I don't think that's their mentality. I think their mentality is okay. We'll see what happens this year. Then if it doesn't work out, then we might do something. I wish they would be proactive, and a lot of times I think they're
yeah,
more reactive.
yeah. You just used the word that I was going to ask. That I was going to put. In a nutshell, so you think they should be more proactive and no reactive?
Yeah, and one thing that and I've talked about is the Marcus Smart situation. And I understand that his pedigree. He's a guy that's been in playoff battles for Boston, and in a vacuum, I love him as a player. But I think
Uh-huh.
on this team, I think when they went out and acquired him, I wasn't a huge fan of the fit then because you were trying to replace Dillon Brooks, who was 6'6", with a guy that's 6'3". So he wasn't even then. He wasn't the best of fit next to John Morant and Desmond Bain because you're looking at a small, like when you go point guard, shooting guard, small forward with Marcus Smart starting, you're looking at a small starting first three there. And now even more so, it's not a great fit now that Gigi and Vince Williams Jr. have emerged, and he's making $20 million. He's a guy that's been injured a lot. I mean, even when he was younger, pretty much every year of his career, he's missed a significant amount of games. So he's always injury risk. He's getting older. He's going to be 31 years old this season. I just worry about his long term viability because I feel like he's going to get hurt again. I mean, you're paying him $20 million. I don't feel like he's a great fit now. Anyway, I feel like you can get what you can get out of him in a younger, cheaper version of Vince Williams Jr. I feel like you already have him on the roster. You also have Gigi who can play those minutes at the three. You could start one of those guys, and I feel like that $20 million with the injury risk and everything that I mentioned earlier. I feel like if you could have moved him for something that better fit the roster, I think I would have tried to do that. And the reports came out that they said they had no interest in moving him, and that's kind of goes back into what I was saying that I just feel like they're just willing to wait things out. And sometimes when you wait things out, you get in trouble because say he goes into the season and he gets hurt again, then his trade value is going to be tanked. You're not going to be able to move him for anything. And I think sometimes you just kind of have to look at situations and have a little foresight and say this. He's not a great fit on the team right now, and he's also injury prone. He's older. He makes $20 million. Maybe if we could move him for a younger player that better fits the roster, maybe we should do that now. And that's kind of something that
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this offseason, and that's just kind of like I said, not their mentality. I think they're willing to wait and see. And hopefully it works out. Hopefully he has the injury-free season, but that's a lot to hope for again because he's never really been an injury-free guy anyway. And again, when you get older, you definitely don't expect that to change.
Yeah. So I take it from your words. Um, you 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 try to use smart on a trade. You just said that, right?
Yeah, and the thing about it
Potentially,
is, yeah,
potentially.
yeah,
I'm not say that must be, but you think about it.
yeah. And I was gonna say, and there might not have been a deal out there. Maybe there wasn't anything out worth moving Marcus Smart for, but the idea that they don't want to move him. I think is the problem that I have with it. That they've said, well, we're just not moving Marcus Smart. Like I like for them to be open to it, even if there was nothing that materialized. And I don't think they are. And that kind of goes back to the mentality that I was talking about of just being kind of safe with everything. They just want to see everything play out. So again, it's not about making trades just to be making trades. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a mentality that I see from them, from things that you hear, just the way they kind of slow play certain things. I think a couple years ago, after that series with Golden State, I really do think if they had been healthy, they win that series, possibly beat Dallas and go into the NBA Finals. I don't know if they would have beaten Boston, but I think they would have had an opportunity. And I think they kind of fumbled that offseason. I think they had an opportunity to kind of really push it then, and they kind of didn't do it then. They actually kind of went backwards. They got rid of Kyle Anderson. They got rid of D'Anthony Melton, went younger, and tried some things, made some trades up in the draft to get Jake LaRavia and David Roddy and Zaire Williams the year before that. And those things really didn't work out. And again, I thought they had an opportunity there to really push it because I felt like that team, if they had kept that team together with Kyle Anderson, D'Anthony Melton, and add a couple of more pieces, I think that team was really there. They could have won a title that next year, and I just kind of think they went backwards then. And I think they're just hesitant to push all their chips in, and this team is ready. I mean, if this team is healthy, you got Ja Morant, who's a superstar. You got Desmond Bain, who's a borderline all-star. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., who's been an all-star defensive player of the year. And you also have this 2-year window open where because in 2 years you got to make a decision on paying Jared big money, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a
Yeah.
question if you're going to be able to do that. So if you're ever going to push all your chips in, this next couple of years is really when you need to do it when you don't have as much money on the books because eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to afford to really add anything significant. So when these next 2 years, I feel like they should really kind of push it, and it just seems like they're kind of okay with going into the season with the status quo. And again, that's kind of my issue. It's not that the team is bad or the front office is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish they were a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree with you in an extent. But I also like Marcus Smart a lot as a player, and I think that
Yeah,
it brings a lot mentality wise.
definitely.
But also, when you look at the contract, it's 20 million a year, I believe. So yeah, I'm not like we must trade him, but yeah, but if the right opportunity arrives, yeah, maybe it's worth at least taking a look at it. Yeah, uh, I'm with you in this. Okay, so you mentioned the 21-22 season, yeah, when Ja got injured against the Warriors.
Yeah,
uh, yeah, then we got the next season with all the issues, also with John Morant, and then the injuries of Stephen Adams and Brandon Clark, and we went on the playoffs with only Tillman as a center, a true center. Um, so now going on into this last season, and from a fan point of view, and how was for you to watch this season?
There were some silver linings, but it was definitely tough. I mean, the John Morant stuff was really heavy. A lot of the backlash that you got, that you had to listen to all year from the media,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of bled over to other players as well. They kind of label other players on the team as being a certain way when that's not really the case. It was a tough year. I think it was a tough year. It was really taxing on as far as being media covering the team, being a fan, being on the players I know and the coaching staff. It was just a tough year. And then you add everything on top of that. You have Ja come back, then immediately get injured. He's out for the season. Just a record number of injuries across the team. It
Mm-hmm.
was like someone had a voodoo doll out on this team last year, man. It was
Yeah.
they were cursed, man. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've never seen anything like it, man. Just so many different players in and out of the roster. You just bringing in guys off the street. So it was a tough year, but I think the positives out of last year is that it's something that you probably wouldn't have discovered if it had not been for that situation. Is Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr.
Yeah,
I
like
think you
the silver linings. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's really the really positives that you had out of this season. That you found out you had two real pieces that are going to be a big part of your future. And you were also able to get those guys locked up on, I mean, just great contracts. Those guys are making like $2.5 million a year a piece, and that's ridiculous for what they're able to give you. Vince is a guy that it really is a connected piece. Can pass the basketball. He rebounds. He's really improved as a shooter. He's really become a pretty reliable 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Can really defend. I think as Marcus Smart, if he stays on his roster until his contract up, I think he's a guy that could kind of replace that role. I really think he's ready to step in now. But if Marcus Smart stays on his roster, he's another guy that you can bring in off the bench that can really defend and give you some of that dog defense, as they say, and can pass the basketball, be a secondary ball handler. And I think you have a budding superstar in Gigi Jackson. Just some of the things he was able to do. I know it was kind of a bad situation, and he was forced into a situation where he had kind of the ultimate green light at that point because they just really didn't have many other guys. But I mean, he could really shoot the basketball, can get to the basket. I really his future is. I mean, the sky's the limit with Gigi Jackson. I really think he's going to be kind of he could be the second or third best player on this team. I think in 3 or 4 years down the line, I think he has that kind of talent. I mean, you see other players around the league when they play the Grizzlies, they're talking about who is this young guy, Gigi Jackson in Memphis, man. I really like him. You've heard lots of guys say that Giannis Antetokounmpo. You hear some of the retired players, Kevin Garnett has talked about him. I mean, he's electric, and I hope they really give him a push and an opportunity this year because, again, man, I think he's ready to really be a big piece of this team, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in summer league. I think they're going to give him kind of the opportunity that came what we saw with Desmond Bain a few years ago, where they put the ball in his hands and let him operate in summer league. I think we're going to see that next week. So I'm really excited about his prospects along with Vince Williams Jr. And I think if there's any positive out of last year, a tough season all the way around, I think finding those two guys and those two guys emerging is the big silver linings out of last season.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But also, do you think like from a group like for group, I mean the players, stand view, like like a frustrating season like this one was like okay, it started with the 25 game suspension, then just like 2 or 3 days because before the season started, the Steven Adams out for the season, and all the things that then went on. Jack coming back and like 9 games, I believe. So
Yeah.
after got injured again, and also the issues, the injuries with Marcus Smart, Canard also had injuries. Like then there's. Do you think like that can also raise up like a more fight mentality for next year?
Yeah, definitely think that's the case. And I forgot to mention Scottie Pippen Jr. is another guy that
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
emerged last year for this team. And he's on a two-way contract, but I think I feel like he's already too good to be on a two-way contract. I think the Grizzlies are going to kind of milk that as long as they can, but he's going to be a guy that I think is going to be a part of this team's future as a backup point guard. I've seen enough from him to believe in him as a real player. That's going to be something else that's exciting to watch him out in summer league starting next week. He's going to be fun. I mean, just can really, I mean, score. He was known as a guy that couldn't shoot the basketball, but really shot the
Mm-hmm.
basketball well last year. He's
Uh-huh.
more athletic than you think, man. He'll go up and dunk on you. I mean, he's a really good player. I like his attitude as well. So he fits in with this team. So all three of those guys, I think, finding those guys last year, I think were the silver linings coming out of last season. As far as that fight, I definitely think so. I think these guys are going to be really hungry, especially when you look at a guy like John Morant, who sit back and watched all the negative press clippings that he was getting and people saying negative things about him, about the team, about the city. And he's the type of guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder. He takes anything that anybody says negatively about him or the Grizzlies personally. And I think he's going to absolutely come out and be on a tear next season. I think he's taking notes, taking receipts, and I think he's going to be on a revenge tour coming out next season. And I think it's going to be fun to watch. And I think all of these guys having that kind of off season, so to speak, I think they're all going to be hungry to come back and prove because a lot of people have seemed to forgot about this team. When you look at all
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, for
yeah,
sure, for sure. Yeah, go on, please. Yeah.
yeah. When you look at all the predictions and stuff that you see out there, they're naming 5, 6, 7 teams in the West and don't even have the Grizzlies in the mix, which is crazy. They're calling them a play-in team on ESPN, and I think if this team stays healthy, this is a top 4 seed in the West. I don't have any questions about it. And I think these guys, Desmond Bain, these guys, Jaren Jackson Jr., they're hungry. They know the type of talent that they have on this team, and I think they're going to come out and win 50 plus games. I think they're going to come back and have a big bounce back year. I think the biggest question with this team is health, because this team is just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I think that's always the question for this team. But if they're able to stay healthy, man, this team is gonna be able to do some damage. And like they said, they're gonna be in the mix with those teams. And they're kind of a team that they have enough talent that if they get into the playoffs, they have the right matchup, they get a break here. Maybe they run into a team that has a player injured here and there. It's going to take some luck. They have enough talent to get to the Western Conference Finals. I don't know if they can win a championship. That's why I kind of
Mm-hmm.
wish they would kind of push the chips in. I think it would. They could possibly win one, but I think it would take a lot of luck. But that doesn't take away anything away from how fun this team's going to be, how good they are, because they're going to be in the mix, and they're going to be a team that nobody wants to place in the playoffs, and they can stand toe to toe with anybody. I just don't know if they have quite enough to win a championship this next year, but they're going to be a very, very good team as long as they're healthy.
Yeah. Still speaking about this last season, how did you see the Des and Jaren? Like taking roles that usually they're not supposed to take when Jamarant is playing. How did you watch both Desmond Bain and later on, especially when Desmond Bain got injured, Jaren, um, how do I say this? Like standing up, like being like the main guys in the team when usually Jamarant is the main guy on the team, and the challenges that brings them, and the way that they face those challenges and how they got through them.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Jaron was the Iron Man last year. I mean, he was a guy in years past where he had dealt with some injuries, but he was healthy for the most part last year. He was the only guy
Mhm.
of kind of the main guys that was there for probably 80 to 90% of the time, and he had to step up for this team. I mean, you saw his role change. He became more of the guy that kind of looked to score first. And again, I think that's kind of why his defense kind of dipped a little bit last year because he was playing center again, so he's having to bang with the bigger guys, but also his focus had to be more on scoring. And I think you saw his scoring numbers go up, even though his efficiency went down. Now with everybody being healthy, he's not going to be asked to score that much. I mean, they're going to be nights where, I mean, he's the third guy on this team, so they're going to be nights
Mhm.
where he scores 20, 25, 30 points, but that's not going to be what they need from him night in and night out. Because when you add John Morant back in his team, you have Desmond Bain, you have Zach Edey, the anchor in the middle. You're not going to need him to do that on a night in and night out basis. And again, I think that's going to help him overall because they're going to be nights where other guys are off, and you're going to need him to kind of be that scorer. And he has a lot more experience doing that and being in that role now. So it'll come easier to him. So I think that's the positive out of that last year. And I think with Desmond Bain was in and out so much last year, but I think Desmond Bain is just a great complementary piece to John Morant to have a guy. And I think having Zach Edey is really going to help him because I think you saw. I mean, when you looked at the numbers with him, Desmond Bain, and when Steven Adams was here, when both of those guys were on the floor, the offensive rating was off the charts because of the looks that he's going to get from having that guy in the middle. I mean, he's going to get
Mm-hmm.
so many
Mm-hmm.
open looks. And if Desmond Bain, you leave Desmond Bain open, he's going to burn you because he's going to knock those shots down most of the time. So I think that's going to be a really fun dynamic to watch with this team. I mean, this team's good. It has the potential to be really, 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 really fun, man. If Zach Edey works out, because they're going to be hard to deal with. Because again, you're going to have that two-man game with Ja and Zach Edey. You have Desmond Bain, who's able to knock down threes. You have Jaren, who's shot blocker, defensive anchor. I mean, this team, and you have good pieces coming off the bench with G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams Jr. I mean, this team is going to be a lot of fun. And Marcus Smart, if he's with him being on this team, even though
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they could move him, we know what Marcus Smart can do. I mean, he's a rugged,
Yeah,
gritty player,
yeah,
playoff experience. He's gonna
yeah, it's
dive on the
proven.
floor. Yeah, he's gonna dive on the floor. He's gonna do anything he can to go out there and win. So they have the personalities on this team. I think all of these guys, and that's another guy I didn't even mention when you talk about guys being hungry. Him being out last year and him watching his former team and the Celtics win a championship. I know he's
Mm.
going to be eager to come out
Yeah,
and
for
perform
sure.
well as well. So yeah, man. I mean, this team they have some pieces in place, man. This is going to be a really good basketball team if they're healthy. I think on both ends of the court because I think again Zach Edey is really going to help this half court offense, and that's been kind of the struggle with this team and for Taylor Jenkins throughout his tenure, and I think he's really going to help that. So if their half court offense goes up, I mean this team on both ends of the floor is going to be a really tough out night in and night out.
Yeah. Uh, Let me ask you because there's something. This is something that I look forward to. Are you looking forward to see Jai and Gigi playing together?
Yeah, I think that. I mean, you imagine the job makes everybody that he plays with better. I don't think there's any
Mm-hmm.
question about that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure.
And you saw how good GG was last year without didn't even have a real point guard out there. So when you add John Morant, if you put John Morant on the floor with GG Jackson, I think you could really have something special. Again, I think with GG, it's just about how does the franchise view him? Are they really gonna give him that push? Because I think he's ready. I don't think there needs to be any reins put on him. I don't think they need to hold him back. I think he's really ready to blossom as a real deal player in this league. I think we saw
Mm-hmm.
we saw some special things from him last year as a rookie. Some numbers that nobody had ever put up since Kobe Bryant was a rookie. Some of the
Yeah.
things that he was doing out there were extremely special. So man, you add John Morant to that, man. I mean, I just think again, as I said earlier, the sky's the limit for Gigi Jackson, and John makes everybody better. All of these guys are going to be better on the floor. Was you talking about Jaren, Bain, Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams Jr., Zach Edey? He's going to make all these guys better, and that's because the way he can pass the basketball, the vision, the gravity that he creates, the way that he can get downhill, get to the basket, it just opens everything up for everybody else, man. So this is going to be a fun team to watch. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, yeah. I truly don't believe that you have going a little bit back on Gigi because, as you said, he's put some numbers that equivalent to Kobe Bryant. You mentioned also to Kevin Durant, to LeBron. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think there's no going back from Gigi and for him to play maybe not such big minutes as this season because of course there are other players, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, is going to be in my point of view, of course, a really important piece on the upcoming season. Yeah, for sure. Also, I want to ask you because I was looking at the roster and we need to to free some roster spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, so roster spots. I think that's the expression. A couple of names that keep coming up. Zaire, Santi Aldama, Jack LaRabia, and John
John
Conchar.
Conchar, yeah.
Yeah, who would you keep? Who would you try to, um, uh, go be happy somewhere else?
Yeah, that's something that this team has needed to do for a couple of years as far as consolidating the bottom of the roster. I think they're trying. I think they're just having a hard time finding any
Mm-hmm.
takers for those guys. I think
Yeah.
Zaire is probably the obvious one that you'd probably try to move first. And I think they're going to try to continue to do that throughout the offseason. You just got to find somebody that wants to take them. You might have to add picks to get someone to take them off your hands. But I think Zaire and Conchar are kind of
Hello.
the. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You back?
You got me?
Oh yeah, I got you.
Okay,
I'm losing, but I got you. Okay.
okay, yes. Sorry, yeah, but I think
No, it's cool, it's cool.
yeah, I
So
think yeah, I think Zaire and Conchar are kind of the two that you really would like to move. I think Jake LaRavia showed some flashes at the end of last year. He was able to get some playing time, and he finally showed a little bit of life. So I think as a bottom of the roster guy, I don't mind having Jake a little so for that much on the bottom of the roster because he's shown that in an emergency he can come in and do something for you. But I think the guys that you really like to move are Zaire and John Conchar, and I think they're going to continue to try to move those guys. Maybe they have to attach a pick and maybe take a second round pick. I don't think you could expect to get a lot of value back from those guys because I think you
hmm
teams are not beating down the door to get either one of those guys, but they definitely need to open up some roster spots. Lamar Stevens is a guy that came in last year that is kind of a fan favorite. Right now, it doesn't look like he's going to be back on the roster because they just simply don't have the space right now. So
Yeah.
if they're going to be able to bring him back, they're probably going to have to move on for some of those guys. So that's something they're going to have to find a way to do. I mean, it might come to a point to where you have to stretch or just flat out waive one of those guys just to simply open up a roster spot. So that's going to be another storyline to watch throughout the offseason. But that's definitely something I think even before last season that you would have liked to been able to do. And I think they're forever trying to do that. I think it's just kind of hard to find any takers for those guys.
You mentioned, sorry, you mentioned Lamar Stevens. Um, he kind of brings a very good energy on the team. Would you agree on this?
Yeah, he's kind of a unique player because he's not big, like the size of a power forward or center, but they even had him playing some four and five last year, which in some wacky lineups. I mean, he's a guy
Uh,
that
yeah, I believe he was on Yanis at some point of the
yeah,
season.
yeah, he's just one of those guys that just he's not the most gifted player, but he just goes out and plays hard. He's going to give you everything he has. I mean, at times he can knock down an open three. He's just a good guy to have on your team, and he fits that mentality that we've talked about. Just a dog, a guy that goes out there and gives 110% every night, and he works so hard, man, that he gets things done. He's just a winning basketball player. He relentless. He grabs rebounds, even though guys are bigger than him, and it's just sheer will and determination. So I just love to have those type of guys on the team. He really wants it because he knows he's not as talented as some other guys, but that's the way he makes his money. He earns his money. That's the way he stays in the league by just going out and outworking guys. And you just love to have those type of guys on the roster. So he's been still here in Memphis. So the kind of speculation was that they were probably bringing him back. But right now, especially when you go out and draft Jalen Wells, you have Cam Spencer now. He's probably going to be on a two-way, but they don't have the roster spots or really even the money until some things shake out to bring him back. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm really, really hoping they find a way to be able to bring Lamar Stevens back because I think personality wise and just the way he plays, man, he's a good guy to have on the end of that roster.
Yeah, I'm a fan. You just said he's still in Memphis?
Yeah,
'Cause I
he's been hanging around the city. Yeah, so he's been hanging around with some of the players. He's been all around town, so he's still here. So being a free agent, I was thinking that he must feel like he had a good chance of coming back. So hopefully that comes to
Mhm.
fruition before this summer's over.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. So you were talking about the summer league. Okay, so what are you expecting for the summer league? What you want to see? What you think that you will see?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. I think it's big for him and his development. He's going to have an opportunity. I would suspect to start at point guard for this team, which I think that's going to be big to show some of the playmaking. We've seen him score a lot more than I think was expected because
Hmm.
again he wasn't known as a guy that could really shoot the basketball and score, but he's shown that he could do that. But I think at summer league to show more of him running the offense, I think that's what he needs to go out and show. But I have supreme confidence that he's going to be able to do that. So I'm excited about watching him and what he can prove to this team in his front office. Obviously, Zach Edey. I think
Yeah, yeah,
even
yeah. I'm sorry that I interrupted because it leads us to one of the first things that we were talking. Zach Edey declined playing for the Canadian team on
yeah,
the Olympics so that he could be available for the Grizzlies. So you're expecting to see him on the summer league, of course.
yeah, I do expect him to play. And again, that kind of shows more of his attitude that he wants
Mm-hmm.
to push his career forward. Like he foregoes playing for Team Canada and comes in and says, "I'm going to play summer league for this team." That just kind of shows you his mentality that he's ready to come in and work. And in an environment like summer league, I think he's going to absolutely dominate. I don't think there's going to be anybody out there with that type of size that's really going to be able to stop him. I mean, I think he's going to be just a monster for this team. And I think if they let him play throughout, a lot of times they'll let some of the better players play a few games and they shut him down. If he plays throughout, I think the Grizzlies are going to win the summer league championship. I don't think there's any question because I just think he's going to be such a matchup problem for most of the teams that they face that the team is just going to be dominant with him. I mean, you just throw the ball up to him, he's just going to dunk all night. I don't think there's going to be much anybody's going to be able to do about it. So I'm excited to watch him and definitely dominate with his team and him probably playing next to Gigi and what he can do. I mean, this is going to be a fun summer league team. There are years where the summer league team you don't really have any exciting pieces, but this is not going to be one of those years at all. I mean, they have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of talent. I think this team is going to be far superior than most of the teams that other teams are going to be able to field at summer league. And I think they're going to go out there and have a lot of fun. They're going to be fun to watch. I think you're going to see a lot of lobs, a lot of dunks, 3-point shooting. So I'm super excited, man. It starts on Monday about the Utah Summer League. They play a few games there. Then
Mm-hmm.
later on next weekend, they're going to be out in
Vegas.
Vegas. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be fun, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think this team has a really good shot of winning the whole thing out there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm super excited to be honest. I never watched. I never be in the past watched the summer league, but I'm gonna be locked in this year. I'm also very excited to see how it goes on the summer league. Yeah. Okay. There's a couple more questions I want to ask you. One is uh Taylor Jenkins. This ongoing question on Chris, because he came with mostly as a development coach. Um, is he the guy who take us to the next level? Are you on that? Do you have doubts? Do you think he's not? What's
Yeah,
your
that
thoughts on this?
yeah that's definitely a big question. That's been always been a question that I've had. I think when you look at what he's been able to do defensively, even last year, this team was in the top half of the league still defensively.
Mhm.
So he's proven that, as far as defense is concerned, he's going to have a good defense almost no matter who you throw out there. But I think the question that we've still been asking all these years since he's been here is they still haven't had a great half court offense. For some reason, they just haven't been able to figure that out. Whether it was personnel, even when they had Steven Adams, it was better than it was without him, but it still wasn't great. So I do have some questions on if he's the guy that can get them all the way there. I mean, if you're kind of looking back of in a situation, you go a few years ago with several years ago now with Golden State. Mark Jackson was the head coach there, and they were a good
Mhm.
team, but it took Steve Kerr to kind of come in and take them to another level. Uh, and I think that might end up being the case here. I have real questions on if this team ever does get to the promised land and wins a championship. I don't know if Taylor Jenkins is that guy. It's not to say that Taylor Jenkins is a bad coach, because I'm not saying that at all. I think he's a
Mm-hmm.
good coach. I think he's a solid coach. I think, again, I think he's a really good coach of defense. I just think there's some things as far as adjustments that he's kind of slow to make. And in the playoffs, it's all about those adjustments. You have to make quick decisions. You can't let things play out. You have to, and I think a lot of times Taylor Jenkins kind of lets things go on too long before he makes adjustments. And I think that's probably his biggest flaw. If I said he had one, it just takes him too long to adjust. You see it in games. You see it times when the team is struggling in a certain aspect. You might see a couple of weeks where the team's struggling here, and maybe they
Mm-hmm.
finally change something and they kind of get it right. But he's just kind of slow to develop. Like, you'll see game to game times where the other team goes on a run and he might take John Morant out, or some of the main players out, and he'll kind of let that team build a lead. And a lot of other coaches, even though those players might have played a lot of minutes, they'll put them back in anyway. Taylor Jenkins kind of sticks to a script. Whenever it's time for those guys to come out, you can almost predict it. Like, in game to game,
Mm-hmm.
like John Morant's going to come out at this time, Desmond Bane's going to come out at this time, and it doesn't really matter who has the momentum or what's going on in the game. A lot of times he'll kind of stick to that same script when maybe you need to keep those guys on the floor longer, even though they might have played a lot of minutes. If you're going to win the game, sometimes, man, you just have to roll with your best players. And I think a lot of times he struggles with that aspect.
Yeah. Would you agree that this upcoming season is like to be proved by Taylor Jenkins, as long as Chris stay healthy, of course.
Yeah, I think it's that for this organization all the way around. I think for Taylor Jenkins, I think Zach Kleiman, I think for some of the players on the team, I think this is, and that's another reason why I kind of wish they would go all in on this year, because I feel like this is the year. I mean, coming off of last year, I mean, you kind of felt like this team was on the way up, and then you run into a season like last year, and that kind of shows you that you might not have all this time that you think you have. Even though these guys are young, different things happen. I mean, who saw the John Morant thing happening, and all that kind of stuff coming up? Who saw that amount of injury? So I feel like when that window is open, man, you shouldn't just say, okay, well, the window's open for 4 or 5 more years. These guys are young. I think when you have that chance, man, you need to go for it. And I feel like as an organization, this is a huge year. So that's why I kind of wish they would push all the chips in, because who knows what could happen. And Taylor Jenkins, if things don't go right, Taylor Jenkins could be gone. You could be talking about a new coach. You could be talking about a new GM. You just never know how these things are going to play out. So I just want to see this team. We want to parade on Beale Street here in Memphis, and I
I
just
want
want
to
them
be
to,
there.
yeah, man. I just want them to do everything they can and that's possible to make that happen. But I think this is kind of a make or break year for Taylor Jenkins. Like you said, according to health, definitely. If this team is healthy and they come and maybe they're healthy and they lose in the first round or something like that, or maybe they make it to the second round but get swept or have a bad showing, I think you could see some major changes with this organization, because at some point, man, with the talent and the commitment that they have made to their own players, with the contract with Ja, with the contract, the Dez, the money that they've already paid Jaron, I think at some point if you're Robert Perry, you have to look at this situation and say, man, I've made the commitment to signing our big three. We need to really push this to try to win a championship. And we've seen this kind of movie play out over and over, and it kind of keeps ending the same way. Maybe it's time to make a change if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. A question I was going to ask you before, but now you mentioned Ja, and I remember Ja has been quiet. Um, Quiet Ja is a good Ja.
Yeah, I think so. I think because, like I said, once all that stuff went down, man, the microscope that he had on him was insane. Because I mean, he's going to have that on him anyway, being who he is. I mean, one of the most electric players in the
Mm-hmm,
league, one of the most recognizable players in the league, one of the faces of the league, I think,
mm-hmm,
at this point. Nike signature shoe deal. So, man, yeah, he's had his head down, been working. I mean, you see some of the videos. He's been working to get the shoulder right. I think he should be cleared for activities. If it hadn't already been cleared, it should be coming up pretty soon. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the best thing that he should do, man. Just keep his head down and concentrate on basketball. Because I mean, I feel like those two situations really, I hate it because God, man, the arrow was pointing up for him, and then just to have something like that, this dumb to just kind of derail you, you just gotta hate to see that. But I mean, the only person that can redeem himself is him. At this point, man, he has to go out on the floor and prove it. Just stay out of those kind of headlines. The only kind of headlines we want to see is him dunking on somebody and him going out
Yeah,
leading this team to wins and leading this team into a deep playoff run, man. That's all we want to hear, man. None of the other stuff. Don't need any of the extra stuff outside of it. And so far, man, he's done a really good job of that, man. He's answered all the questions. He's saying the right things. He says he's in a much better headspace. He started a AAU team with the
yeah,
young kids. And he said
yeah.
that's
So that,
really, yeah, he said that's really fulfilling for him. That really helped him kind of through some of the stuff that he was going through. So man, he looks to be in a much better space, man. And I'm hopefully, I think I think he's going to take care of business on the court, man. But he just has to make sure he can continue to do that off the court, have positive role models and positive voices around him, and I think he's going to be fine because I think he understands now what he has to lose. Because again, the NBA is pushing him to be one of those faces, along with some other young guys like Anthony
mhm.
Edwards and a lot of these other young Jason Tatum and there's other guys in the league. He's right there with those guys as far as popularity and how much the media loves him. So he just got to stay out of those headlines. And again, man, stay in the headlines of positive things and helping this Grizzlies team again trying to get that parade on Beale Street.
Yeah, and just let basketball let basketball play speak for you. Yeah.
Yes, 100, definitely.
Yeah. So two more questions I have to you. How do you okay, given that we stay healthy, that's an issue. How do you envision next season?
Yeah, man. I think if this team stays healthy, man, they're going to be really good. I think the national media and even fans, you see a lot of stuff. I mean, it just seems like they've completely forgotten about this team. I mean, because this team was
Mm-hmm.
the two seed 2 years in a row before
Yeah.
last season. Now they didn't have the playoff success of those two seeds that they wanted to, and a lot of that had to do with injury. And the West has gotten better, but if this team is healthy, I think they're a top four seed. I think they're going to win 50 plus games, and again get to the playoffs and be a team that nobody wants to face. I personally think their absolute ceiling is the Western Conference Finals. Hopefully, I'm wrong, and hopefully, they get to a situation where they can break through and we get to an NBA Finals. But I think getting to the Western Conference Finals is a feat in itself because this franchise has only gotten there once. In the grit and grind era, they made it to the Western
Mm-hmm.
Conference Finals one year against the San Antonio Spurs. Ended up getting swept in that series, but I mean, I think that would be fun. That's a start. You get to the Western Conference Finals. A lot of times teams have to take their lumps. We saw Boston be right there for a few years, and they finally broke through
Mm-hmm.
and won a title this year. So I'm not going to be mad if they get to the Western Conference Finals. I'm definitely not going to be upset about that. And I think they have that type of talent if they get the right matchup. Because I'm not afraid of anybody. Like I mean, that's not necessarily saying I feel like they're going to beat anybody in the series. I think Minnesota, Denver, OKC, and Dallas, those teams will be tough. But there are scenarios where they could beat any of those teams. I don't think there's any question that this team can match up with anybody in the league. So I don't have any questions about that. So I think they're going to be a top four seed, and I think they're going to win 50 plus games as long as this team is healthy, and they're going to be right there in the mix with the other contending teams in the Western Conference. I really do believe that.
Yeah, I believe so too. Well, okay. One last question that I want to ask you. Usually, since I do this podcast, sometimes, well, a lot of times with fans that are not from Memphis, I usually ask them how they become a Memphis Grizzlies fan. You're from Memphis, so I'm not going to ask you how did you become a Memphis Grizzlies fan, but I'm going to ask you how is it to be a Memphis Grizzlies fan in Memphis?
Oh man, it's fantastic. I mean, this city really bleeds basketball. Whether you're talking about the local university or University of Memphis or the Memphis
Hmm.
Grizzlies, this is a basketball city, man. We love our basketball, and I've been a fan of this team since day one. Back in 2001, back when I was a teenager, I was at the first game at the Pyramid, which is now Bass Pro
Cool.
Shop hunting store. It used to be an arena, but that's a story for another day.
Uh,
But yeah, man, I've seen the battles of this team started off as a team that really no one cared about, a team that was winning 15, 20 games a year and really build into to something special. From the early days with Pau Gasol coming in that first year to him moving on to Mark coming in here, which is that was an incredible story too, man. Just kind of how that played out. Powell was kind of imploring the team to get Mark here, and he
Yeah.
ended up being traded for Mark, which is kind of a crazy story. And he went on, man, and won championships in L.A. with Kobe, and went on to have a fantastic Hall of Fame career. And Mark came in here, and he became the fan favorite. Man, we love what Mark did while he was here. Man, just a tremendous player and leader and ambassador for the city. And now this new iteration of this team and these young guys, I think the ceiling is even higher. For the great things that Mark Gasol, Zach Randolph, and Tony Allen, Mike Conley, those guys did, I think this team has a much higher ceiling than those guys. It's a different brand of basketball. It's really fun to watch. They get up and down, and I just like this group of guys, and I think they fit the city. I think they fit the mentality of the city. Again, this is a city that you work hard for what you get, and that's the same thing that we see on the floor with these guys. So they really embrace it. And one thing about Memphis, if you embrace the city, it embraces you back. And these guys have really done that. So it's fun, man. It's fun having an NBA team in the city, especially being a small market. This is not a New York City or Chicago or
Or
LA
Los
or anything
Angeles.
like
Yeah.
that. Yes, it's
Hmm.
a smaller city. So to have an NBA team like this, it's really something special, man. I think this city really appreciates it and really embrace this team and appreciate this team and these guys in the community. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, and it's certainly like if you pay attention, like I do, it certainly like goes across all over the world. Yeah, it's surely it's something that's really the love, the passion of the city for the basketball team, the locked inness. It's something that passionates me. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it could be,
how.
and I know people. It's cliche. People will say, "Oh, well, fans are crazy everywhere," but I really do feel like it's different.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's,
It is. It is.
it's a different kind of connection. It's a different kind of connection when you're in a city that doesn't have necessarily have a lot of other things going on. It's a different kind of connection to the players. It's a different kind of connection from the players to the city. It's just something special about that team and this city that you're not going to get in a New. I mean, you're not saying that the New York fans because they're not passionate or the Lakers
Of
fans are not
course.
passionate. It's just a different kind of relationship. I feel.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Look, Isaac, it was such a great pleasure to have you here. Such a wonderful talk with you. Such a wonderful conversation. I mean, with you. Once again, I want to thank you to accept to be here.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Thank you, man. I really thank you for inviting me to come on, man. Really enjoyed it, man. Like I said, man, enjoying talking Grizzlies basketball like 24/7, man. So this was definitely fun, man. Thanks for inviting me.
no, no, it's my honor. It's my honor, and hopefully, if you're up to it, beginning the season, you can come back again, and we will see how the season's working, is going, and we talk more. It's okay with that.
Yeah, man. Would love to do it, man. Just anytime, man. Just let me know.
Okay, I will for sure I will. And once again, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for like being a Memphian, and you were a Memphian here. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man. And like I said earlier, man, and thank you for being an international fan, man. It's so I love to see it, man. Fans out of the country because again, for a small market team, that's just not something that you see a lot. You expect that for the Lakers and the Knicks and the Celtics. You expect to see people all around the world, but seeing people around the world and grace the Grizzlies, man, we definitely appreciate that here in the city of Memphis.
yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, Memphis is special. Yeah, Memphis is special. Yeah, Memphis has a special thing. So
Yeah, we
that's it.
definitely appreciate that.
No, yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone that was listening. It was Isaac Simpson here talking with us on episode 11 of Grizzlies Worldwide. Okay, you keep following on us, and soon we will be back.